So as we talk about creating screen time limits that actually works, at the end of this video, you're going to learn how to set screen time rules in your home. You're going to learn how to make it work so that you can stick with it and be consistent with it without feeling guilty, without feeling like the bad guy. And you're also going to learn why those approaches I am about to share with you works better than constantly dealing with restrictions upon restrictions upon restrictions. Hi, my name is Kudirat. I'm a parenting strategist and kids reading specialist. And all I do is bring to you parenting strategies that works in real life for real families. And today I want to talk about setting screen time limits that actually works. Stick around with me. If you feel like your kids are always glued to their screens all day, you're not alone. A lot of parents, a lot of families face the struggle. All right? And I can relate that finding the right balance for screen time can feel really impossible in this digital world where we are no longer dealing with television. There are many mobile devices to contend with. But don't worry if you're facing this challenge in your home, because today I'll share with you practical and realistic tips to set screen time limits that actually works for your family and that your children would actually follow. And you no longer have to engage in power struggles with your children or constantly nagging them to put down their devices. All right. So as we talk about creating screen time limits that actually works, at the end of this video, you're going to learn how to set screen time rules in your home. You're going to learn how to make it work so that you can stick with it and be consistent with it without feeling guilty, without feeling like the bad guy. And you're also going to learn why those approaches I am about to share with you works better than constantly dealing with restrictions upon restrictions upon restrictions. All right. So without further ado, let's get into this. But before I get into it, I want to remind you to like this video, share it, and hit the subscribe button if you have not subscribed yet, so you can receive many of my videos and be notified when I upload one. So let's dive in. First, let's look and understand why it is important to set screen time limits for your children. Number one is overuse of screen time can actually impact your child's well-being negatively. It can impact their sleep. They might not be having sound sleep. It can impact their mental health because they're glued to that, and their brain releases dopamine, which often demands for that, and prevents them from doing other things that benefits their future. It impacts their critical thinking because they are always focused on that, and screen time is actually really addictive. So if you don't help your child put a limit to that, they are going to be addicted. I mean, it's not only drugs that get people addicted. So if you understand why doing drugs is bad, right, you understand why screen time is bad too. And excessive screen time, I mean, in this case. So I'm not saying that you should not ever, your child should never use screen or watch TV or play games, right? But you have to help them set healthy limits that would keep on with them forever. Because check it, even for adults, sometimes a lot of us are addicted to our devices too. And you know the impact. It prevents you from doing other important things. It takes away your time and attention from other things that are important, even work and house chores, and before you know it, time is gone. Before you know it, you're procrastinating on things that you should do. Before you know it, you're not achieving your goals. Before you know it, your life is getting into a mess just because of your addiction to screen. A lot of us will sit down on our butt and watch TV all days, and if when our husbands are coming, you say, let me go and this, let me go and So if you can imagine that for you, an adult that already has a developed brain, how much more a child that their brain is just developing? And you want to fill that brain with only what they see in the screen, it is not healthy. That is one way. One way is they're not able to pay attention. They begin to lack attention, quality attention span, because they're not paying attention to what is around them. It begins to impact their health too, because they're not doing things that are physically active for them. And children need to move their body a lot. They need to engage in physical activities. So when your child is engaging on excessive screen time, they sit on their butt, they lounge on their back. So their physical health is going to be impacted negatively too. Number 3 is they are consuming a lot of things from this screen time, even if you think it's educational. So you really need to help your children to bring their screen time to the barest minimum, the time that you control. So it impacts their mental health, okay, and physical health even, and eventually academic performance, because when they are not paying attention to their studies, to other things that are important, of course, they begin to do poorly at school. So kids might struggle with managing their screen times and emotions when screen time isn't regulated, okay? So their emotional health, their mental health, their physical health, and their academic performances are at stake if you leave screen time unregulated. All right, so the solution to this, to all of this, is setting limits that helps to create structure, that encourage healthier habits and promotes family connection. So the thing is not the thing here is not to just cancel screen time altogether or say no screen time or whatever, all right, but to regulate it and set limits to it. All right. Studies have shown that children 8 to 12 years are spending average of 4 to 6 hours on their screens daily. That is a lot. But it is even worse with teenagers that are spending 9 hours daily on their phone, according to studies that reported that. All right, so you want to really not take away all their screen, all right, but take time to help them regulate this so that they are used to to using screen time in a healthier way into their adulthood. Because check it, even us adults, right, we are struggling with this. So if we can help our children not to struggle with that habits like we are, the better for them, right? So my tip number 1 for you to help your child set effective limits on their screen time is to create clear and consistent rules. Set daily or weekly limits on screen time, okay, for different activities. You can say today you're going to use your screen for games for 1 hour, or for social media for 30 minutes, for all the kids that can use social media, or social media for 1 hour, whatever works for your family, okay? But ensure that you make this rule age appropriate and involve your kids in creating those rules. What that does is it makes this rule very relatable to your kids. It decreases the chances of pushback and sneaking around with it when you involve them in doing that. Okay, so for example, you can say no screen time during meal times, no screen time 1 hour before bedtime. You only use screen time after you have done your homework and your chores. Okay, you can use a visible chart or checklist to track screen time usage. This is one thing I do in my home. I have only 3 checklists for my kids to use their screen time. So number 1 is, have you done your studies? Number 2 is, have you done personal care? And is your surrounding and environment taken care of? That is, you have done your chores, you've tidied your places, and then you can use screen time for 1 hour. So tip number 2 would be to designate a no screen zone and no screen time. Okay, this establishes physical and time boundaries that encourage your child to engage in other activities. So for example, and particularly for older kids to keep them safe, no screen time in their bedrooms. All right, so you ensure that they're not using their screen in isolated places where they can do activities that are dangerous, right? So no screen time in your no screens in your bedroom, or no screens at dinner time. Screen time is only for 1 hour or for 30 minutes, okay? Or you can give extra time after that 1 hour or 30 minutes for whatever they want to watch, right? And ask to be only in public places. And you can say after that you can use screen time for another 30 minutes to do a particular activity, right? So for me, my kids only have to make sure that they have done their studies for the day, make sure that they have done their chores for the day, and make sure that they have done personal care, and that their surrounding, their belongings, their environment is tidy. Once they have done these three things, they can use screen time for 1 hour. And that 1 hour would be set on that device. So when the time is up and they hear the ring, they have to return that device to where it belongs. Now, tip number 3 is you're going to create effective consequence for when they break the rule. So you have set a clear and consistent rule. You have to be consistent with those rules to be effective. It's not just about setting the rules, okay? So after you set the rules, you set the consequence. When you break the rule, this is what's going to happen. So for me, my children's screen time is 1 hour in a day after they have checked off their list, right? And then they can now use the screen time for 1 hour. So when you hear the ring of timer up, you return the device to where it belongs. If you do not return it, and I have to remind you to return it, or I have to take it from you to return it, you lose a certain time from your next watching session. Now the kicker is they can have more time in that one day, so they can actually use screen more than 1 hour in a day. So when their initial 1 hour is over and they drop that device, they can pick up a book to read a certain number of predetermined pages, or do extra studies to get extra 20 minutes of watching time. When that 20 minutes is over, they can do another physical activities to get another 20 minutes of watching time. So they watch 20 minutes and break off the cycle to do something else. They watch it 20 minutes to break off and watch something else, if the time permits. Okay, if the time permits and we're not going out for other activities or doing other things, right? So if we have all the time in the world, they can be doing these 20 minutes, do other things for 1 hour, come back to do screen time 20 minutes. That is what we'll do in my home. So that brings me to the third tip. Okay, the third tip is offer alternatives to the screen time. So as you're regulating screen time for your child, now they have finished all their checklist and they do screen time of the 1 hour, and then what else? If they still have more time during the time. So you have to fill in those time. It doesn't mean that you have to physically entertain your children, but provide them alternatives to take care of that period. Don't shy away from boredom, okay? It is okay for them to be bored, but encourage them and teach them how to fill up that space of boredom with something. So you can think for them, you can help them think and write for them if they cannot write yet, or help them write, or even use pictures for children that cannot read yet for suggested activities. So in that time that they finish their initial watching time, they can go to that activity list and check what activity they want to do for another 1 hour, and then they can do the screen time another 20 minutes. Right? So you need to have a list of activities for them, engaging activities, and you can fill up that time to completely eliminate screen time for the rest of the day with outdoor activities. Go bike riding, take a walk in the park, do some cooking together, do some sports, give them drawings and stuff. There are many things that you can occupy their times with. Okay, they can build Lego, they can cook with you, or stuff like that. So you want to think and help your child, teach your child to think about other activities that can be engaging to fill up that boredom time. Okay. All right. So tip number 5 now is to model healthy screen use. What does that mean? You have to put your phones away too. You have to be disciplined not to sit in front of the TV all day too. This is because children mimic what they see a lot. So if you're constantly on your phone, you're constantly watching TV all day, neglecting things that you need to do, it's harder to enforce this limit. All right, so you put down your own devices too, and during family times, and be transparent with your children. Explain to them why you're setting this limit. Explain to them why the limit exists. Explain to them the benefits of that. Explain to them why. When children know why, they imbibe this habit, and it doesn't just feel like it's somebody that is, it's not just you enforcing that on them, just forcing them to do that. They imbibe it, and they can continue with that habit even when you're not there, even when you're older, right? We recently just finished a 60 days no screen time in my family. It was for the kids, but eventually we adults also join in. All right, because I realized that I was also not using my screen time healthily, so I joined in. Okay, so I set up 60 days detox, screen time detox for my kids, where in 60 days they cannot watch screen, not to play, not to watch, not to play game, not to read, not to do nothing. So the only thing they're allowed to do with screen time is do their study, because he's doing one online. He's doing online classes. He's doing online Arabic classes, so he's allowed to do that, and he's allowed to call, with a abuela and abuelo, and with his dad, because his dad was not with us at the time, right? So those were the only things we were allowed to do in 60 days that they were allowed to do in 60 days, my kids, right? But eventually, after like a week or so, I joined in too, because it was just convenient, because the TV were not on, and I find myself not, doing healthy screen time too. So I just joined in. No harm there. Now we can be flexible with this. During the 60 days, we did not completely zero screen time. And the reason is because when we have visitors come in, of course, we turn on TV for our visitors, and yes, my kids and myself ended up, watching the TV with our guests. And when we also visit people, we're not going to set rules in their home to not on their TV just because we have no screen time, right? So in all the 60 days, we ended up watching screen, I think 5 times. And those 5 times are when we have visitors and when we go to visit other families, right? So yes, we break off in between, but the principles were still maintained. Do you get? Okay. The next tip I have for you, I don't know the number again. I'm always messing up my numbers, but the next tip is to use parental control tools. Now, technology can assist in setting boundaries, okay? But I want to warn you to not solely rely on these technologies, because you want to really encourage your child to imbibe healthy habits, not being forced by devices or by you to do things, if you understand what I mean. So, for example, I use timer to remind them that the time for your screen time is off, and you need to put that down and do some other physical activities, right? So don't rely entirely on tools, okay? Use them to support the habits you want to teach your child, so that it comes from within them, and that way they do not have to sneak around the apps, around the tools. They do not have to sneak and push back and throw unnecessary tantrums and all of that around your rules. When they understand why, and you be consistent with your consequences and your rules. All right. Now, when I say consequences, a lot of people will think that, oh, if you don't drop it, I'll yell, I'll beat, or you would not have it again, I will throw it away, I will keep it. No, no, we do not have to go that route. When you do that, it becomes punishment, and your child will become sneaky around it. All right, they will be using it without you knowing, just to avoid that punishment. But constructive consequences would help in this case. If you want me to make videos on how to set effective consequences is different from what many of you parents do. Okay, so if you would want me to make a video about how to set healthy consequences, let me know in the comment section and I'll be sure to get to it. All right. Okay, so you don't want to rely entirely on tools. Okay, there are tools you can use that when the time is up, it locks the app, your children cannot get to use it anymore. It just locks it for them. Okay, but you don't want that to happen. You want your child to actually take their own steps to stop it. Not that some app or devices is effectively forcing them to stop because it has just locked the device and they cannot use the device. Not that because they know that it's time to drop it and I dropped it. You understand the point? So use the tools to support the habit, not depend solely on it. Right? So you want to teach your children that habit. Let it come from them. Okay. The next step is to be consistent. Maybe I've said that before, but again, be consistent. If you set the rule and you're not consistent with it, you're deceiving yourself. So you have to be consistent with the rules and the consequences. All right. So common issues might arise, and some of you might think that, oh, what if my kid resists or throw tantrum? What do I do? Please remember this always. It is not only on screen time, on any rule. It is okay and it should be expected that your kids will resist, push back, or throw tantrums. Now, it is your job to consistently stay calm, stand firm, and briefly explain why this rule exists. Okay? Changes take time, but consistency is key. All right? So you handle this with calmness and consistency, and your children are going to come around to know that, okay, so this is how this works, and that's how it's going to work. And it is okay to be flexible, but stick to the general principles. Okay? Have an idea, have a solid principle around this, and even whatever flexibility you go around that, the general principle, the main idea of the rule remains the same. Like I was telling you that I had a 60 days no screen rule, but sometimes in between we broke it because we have people visit us and because we visit other people. So we are flexible around that, but that principle still maintains. So if you ask me, I will say we have 60 days no screen time, even though there were 5 days in that period that we did not effectively, that we broke it and we had to use the screen. Okay, so even though there are 5 days in between those 60 days that we use screen. But if you ask me, if you ask my kids, they will say we had 60 days of no screen time to detox. Okay, so it was detoxing from screen time, and after 60 days we resume our normal schedule again. So our screen time schedule in my home is initial 1 hour after you have checked off your list. So your list, the list of my kids is of 3 things, like I said earlier: self-care, study, and take care of your surrounding. And of course, a physical activity. All right, so that makes 4. So when you have done this, you can have screen time for 1 hour. After the initial 1 hour, if you want more time, you can get it. You can get 20 more minutes after you have done another physical activity. Like you can take off time to read, you can take off time to do some other play, you can take some time to do some more studies or whatever. You have to go do another 1 hour or more of other activity, and then you can get 20 more minutes to watch if there is time for that. Okay, So another thing that I want to talk about is that I know that a lot of people that are working from home might have the challenges of giving their children screen to occupy them so that the parents can get some work done. I understand that because I work from home too. And yes, screen time can be a quick fix for emergency moments, right? But don't make it an habit. All right, it is okay to do that once in a while if it's critical, but don't make it an habit. And especially if if you have kids that are 5 years and older, that should no longer be your case if you're doing things correctly. All right, you should already teach your children that, oh, mommy's going to be in the meeting, or daddy wants to take a call, or whatever, right? And that means you cannot talk, you cannot come to me except there is an emergency. So you teach them what an emergency means. If this is happening, if somebody is dying or something terribly is going to happen, then you can come and call me. But if it's not an emergency, you don't come to me. All right, so you have to teach your children this. And remember, again, a change takes time. So if your child is used to interrupting you during calls and all of that, they will still continue to do that for a while until they get into that change, right? So you continue to consistently teach them how to handle that. If you want me to make another video on how to specifically teach your child to do that, you can do that. Now, my child, you can put that in the comment section and I'll be sure to get to it. Now, my children are 4 years and 6 years old, and they know when I'm going into a meeting or I want to take a phone call, I would inform them. Oh, I'm about to take the call. What does that mean? They will both chorus. That means be quiet and don't disturb mommy. Great. And that's it. I can be on my phone for 1 hour. You will not hear my children talking. Come talk to me. You can hear that voice whispering in the background or hearing them from another room, right? But you will not interfere with my calls, and they will not come to me to disturb or make noise or whatever, right? So you teach your children, particularly, especially if they're 5 years old and above. They are old enough. Their brain is matured enough to take such training. If your children are less than 4 downwards, maybe not so. You might still need to use screen time once in a while, but you can still train them. All right, it's just a little bit more difficult than when your children are older. Like I said, my children are 4 and 6, and they're already trained on that, right? So you can do that. So if you have a very little child that might disturb your meeting or your work from home time, and you need to give them screen time. So you need to give them screen to occupy their time and keep them busy. Setting up structured screen time for those moments can be beneficial if you balance it up with screen-free activities afterwards. Okay. So after your 1 hour meeting or your 30-minute meeting that you have given your child screen time to keep them quiet in those time, then after that, you have to make them do some physical activities. You have to make them do some other things that are important. You have to you have to limit their screen time on other times so that you can structure their screen time into the time that you need them to be quiet, if that makes sense. Okay, so here's a quick recap to help you put everything into perspective and streamline it. Okay, so to set screen time limits that really works and that your children will follow is, number one, create clear rules. Rules means that your child knows what to expect before their screen time, they know what to expect during their screen time, and they know what to expect after their screen time. That is your number one thing. And you want to pair that, your rule, up with a consistent consequence. So your child knows that when a rule is broken, this is what is going to happen. I have said in this video what consequences mean. It doesn't mean what many parents used to think that it does. It doesn't mean threatening your child. It doesn't mean shouting and screaming and taking the screen out forever and all of that, right? So number one is create clear rules. Pair that up with effective consequence. And I said that if you want me to make a video about how to create effective consequence, let me know. So number two is designate screen-free zones. Okay, screen-free zones and times. Screen-free zone might be their bedroom or toilet. Like when you're going to the bedroom, you cannot go with any device or screen. When you're going to the toilet, no device, no screen. And you have to follow in that rule too. Designating screen-free time could be that during dinner or during some other time, during some other family time, screens are not allowed. Okay, so screen are not allowed on the dining table, screen are not allowed 1 hour before bedtime, screen are not allowed, so you create designated time that screen are not allowed. And the next thing is that you offer fun alternatives. You want to create and help your children think about alternatives to screen. What else can they do with their time, with their boredom? They can read books, they can do coloring, they can do Lego, they can do physical activities, they can go biking, they can do all of that. I have mentioned many of that. And then the next thing is you want to model healthy screen time behavior. Sorry, my phone is moving. Okay, you want to model healthy behavior. You want to model the good behavior that you want your child to behave around the screen time, right? And then the next thing is you can use parental control devices, okay? And use it wisely. Don't rely on them. Don't let them force your child to behave. Give your child the chance to have to imbibe that habit and not be forced by a device or by you yelling and all of that, right? So that's what you want to do. All right, so let me know in the comment section which of these tips are you going to try first. Share your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you have not done so, and hit the notification bell so that you get more parenting tips from me the next time I post. I'll see you later.